loud. We are now recording.
Okay. So everyone can see my screen, okay, I would assume. So my name is April Smith, and I work for Wright Medical. I work directly for the company. I'm in the HR department. I'm on the talent acquisition team. And so what I do for the organization is I'm a recruiter. I have a fancier title, talent acquisition lead. But what I primarily do is recruit. And as we have positions open, I support supply chain. So I'm sure you all have heard supply chain, logistics, distribution, and so that is my primary focus. But there are other areas that I have staffed as well: engineering, process engineering, accounting. I kind of float around, but my dedicated area is supply chain. So for Wright Medical, supply chain also includes production and manufacturing as well. And so just a little bit about Wright Medical, you guys may be familiar. We just actually got acquired by Stryker November the 10th. And so we manufacture medical device instruments for foot, ankle, shoulder, and elbow surgeries. So the screws, plates, and things of that nature, that's for ankle replacements, surgeries related to the foot, the shoulder, or elbow. So I've been in HR over 25 years, and I'm really passionate about the interview process. Um, Very passionate about helping employees to embrace the interview process. And so I think I have 20 minutes, which is not a lot of time, and I can um, send this deck back to you, Alan, so you can share it with those on the call. Since I don't have email addresses, I think it may be easier for you to share. But what I want to do is have an open dialogue about the interview process. And so there's three buckets. Um, and how to prepare for an interview, a checklist, what to do during the interview and after the interview. Where I really want to focus more time is during the interview. I think that's kind of the critical part, because that's where you get that 30 minutes or an hour to really kind of sell yourself. Some of this may be common sense to you, some of it may be new. Um, there's so much to, an interview process. So just view these as best practices. And if there's something that you can take away to help you during the interview process, I encourage you to do that. I'll start first with the preparation checklist. And here's the thing: you can find so much good information on the internet. A lot of this kind of came from the internet, and then just some of the best practices that we've developed as a team. So you can take time out and, kind of do some research on your own, and you'll probably find a lot of this, but, you may find some new things as well. So preparing for your interview, it really starts with connecting with the job description. So it's so important to really read the job description. So oftentimes, candidates don't really read the full job description. They may just look at the job title and kind of skim it. I encourage applicants, when you apply for a job, print that job description out, or either cut and paste it or save it, because you don't know whether the company will call you back or not. And so sometimes the job description gets, the job posting gets taken down, and you're like, oh my God, they called me, but I cannot even remember the job. So definitely read it thoroughly, but also print it and make a copy of it. Um, Research the company, so important. One of the common questions, and it's a plus for you if you get the interview and they say, hey, what do you know about us? You want to definitely take time out and research the company. Obviously, you may not be able to research every company that you apply for, but if you get a call back and you schedule that interview prior to, your conversation with the manager or with HR, you want to go to the company's website. Most companies have an about us page that kind of gives you a brief overview of who they are. So you definitely want to read that. Um, Glassdoor. I don't know how many of you guys are familiar with Glassdoor, but Glassdoor is a really cool social media site to learn more about the company. Glassdoor is where current and former employees will write about their experience working for the company. So you get to really see the good, the bad, the ugly. If someone is disgruntled, maybe they had a negative experience working for the company, maybe they got terminated or whatever, you may see more negative comments. So you really kind of have to be balanced, as to how you take it in. It may not be a total reflection of the company, but it's definitely helpful information. And this is common. Prepare 2 to 3 questions. Should you get a phone call, that's really important. When I talk with hiring managers and we debrief about candidates, um, hiring managers frown when candidates don't come prepared with questions. So try to think of just not those common questions, but you want to maybe ask, I think a really good one is, tell me, you know, something like, other than tell me about the job. You may want to say, tell me about the culture. Or what is your vision for this department? So you want to not think of those kind of simple, easy questions, because a well rounded interview process will answer some of the most common questions. While the hiring manager is talking and explaining the job, there may be something that they say that you want to kind of learn a little bit more about. But bottom line, make sure that you prepare 2 to 3 questions, and also arrive early for your interview. Now, one of the things that I tell candidates, and we're right now in a virtual world due to the pandemic, so most companies are not allowing candidates on site. They're using Zoom, Microsoft Teams, FaceTime to connect virtually. So check your technology out, sign in at least 5 or 10 minutes early, just to make sure that you can work through any technical challenges. If a company does invite you on site, I advise candidates to arrive no more than 5 or 10 minutes early. To arrive 30 minutes or an hour can be kind of disrespectful to that hiring manager's time. And I know, 10 or 15 years ago, it was a thing about get to the interview, 30 minutes to an hour early, but that's kind of dated. Oftentimes managers are in meetings, they're, doing other things, and they don't want someone to get there 30 minutes to an hour early and just kind of hang out in the lobby. So just make sure you're respectful of their time. Are there any questions before I move to the next section of what to do and say during the interview? Are there any questions that you all have? Okay. Um, I had an opportunity to speak with someone on our team that had a military background. And I'm also going to point you to Stryker's website. Stryker is spelled S is in Sam, T is in Tom, R is in Robert, Yer. And when you get an opportunity, go to the Stryker website, and click on career opportunities. And I think if you drop down to the bottom, there is a section on military um, interviewing, and there is a really nice PowerPoint that will give you some additional information. And Alan, I'll send the link to you as well. I had an opportunity to talk to the person that's over military engagement, military recruitment, and she really gave me some really good um, tips to put in the during the interview section. So here goes. So some of the things that she told me, and all of this really makes sense, but she wanted me to add in some keywords that, someone that has been in the military will kind of better understand. In any interview, you definitely want to relax. Interviews are nervous. They make us nervous. But one of the things she talked about is that the military lifestyle is so disciplined and rigid, and corporate America is really different. So it's so important to just really kind of relax, so that, you can relate to the person that's interviewing and the person can relate to you as well. So that's something that's really important. Um, Also, as I mentioned, it's important to ask about the company's culture and growth opportunities as well. And like I said, that goes back to kind of researching the company. But, one of the questions should be growth opportunities and also culture. A lot of companies today, and this is something that's kind of evolved over the last 10 years, they're not just hiring your knowledge, your education, your skill set. Companies want to know, do you fit into their culture? Um, do you fit into the team dynamics? What is so unique about you that outside of your ability to maybe do the job, that really kind of meshes well with the team? Um, if the team dynamics are really laid back, and everybody is kind of easygoing, they're not looking for someone that's, really kind of uptight, or someone that's kind of a know it all. And so just kind of understanding the department culture, and also just the overall company culture is really important. um, don't appear to be anxious. So, what I've learned in talking with the military recruiter is, and I've never been in the military. Like I say, these are some things that she shared, but a lot of times in the military, you don't get an opportunity to raise your hand and say, hey, this is the type of job that I would like to do. It's more of a you are assigned to a specific job. And so, if you are asked a question about what do you enjoy doing, or, what type of job are you interested in, don't be, shy about communicating what your interests are and what your preferences are. Because a lot of times, corporate America and a lot of companies, they want to know what it is that you're most passionate about versus, hey, I'm transitioning, out of the military and I just want a job. So it's your time to really be transparent and to really say, you know what, I did this in the military and I really enjoyed this part of the job. I see that you guys offer these types of positions. So this is what I'm most, passionate about. In any interview, you don't want to use slang language. You want to be, very professional. But some of the advice that I was given is to stay away from words that may be normal in that military setting, such as combat, bomb, blow up. That may be, common language or lingo that, is military talk. But definitely, find other words because it could be perceived as scary or dangerous terminology. It may kind of, leave a negative impression, with the hiring manager or the hiring team. Are there any questions thus far? Is this kind of making sense? I really can't see you guys since I have my I'm sharing my screen, but are there any questions? Does this make sense?
It makes perfect sense. It's the same thing that I teach here at Career Force.
Okay, good deal. Good deal. Good deal. Um, Focus, well, in your interview, again, we're all human. You know, I've never been in an interview where I wasn't nervous, but I tried to not let, my nerves get the best of me. But it's so important to focus on your answers and not sound rehearsed or stiff. And so, in another session, I help employees with behavioral based interviews. So hopefully, I'll get an opportunity to really talk more about the STAR method, which is when you answer questions, you want to state the situation or the task. What actions you took and what the outcome was. So that's STAR. But you know, be prepared. You can sometimes look at a job description and kind of anticipate maybe what are some of the questions that they may ask. You can go to the internet and you can just Google like common interview questions, but you know take time out, prepare answers, and without sounding rehearsed or stiff. And I know that's kind of hard to do, but when you read a job description, the job description, a really good job description will kind of tell you what are some of those essential functions, what are some of those soft skills. And what I advise candidates to do is, if strong communication is listed on the job description, I can bet you that there's going to be a question about, communication. Describe your communication style, or how do you communicate? So you'll get an opportunity to kind of make up some potential questions and just kind of rehearse answers for that question, for that answer. Um, the other one is, don't say negative things about coworkers or your boss. We all sometimes work with people that personality don't mesh with ours. We may have had a negative experience with our boss, and just had an overall negative experience with, the company. And so employers are not looking for answers that um, you know, talk about, you don't like your boss, how you felt about your boss. Um, you just really have to, even if you're asked a question, tell me about a difficult coworker. You can just really talk about more so that person's style, or that person, or their personality, but really, we all have some good in us. So you really kind of want to communicate it in a way, maybe that person maybe kind of showed up at work sometimes and wasn't really the most pleasant person to get along with. But what they're really looking for is not so much negative things about that person, but how did you work around that person's personality traits or their style to really draw that person in, so that you could work with that person as your team member. Sometimes people kind of go on and on about those negative experiences. I've heard stories in the military, from military talent, where you know regardless of how you did your job, somebody else maybe didn't pull their weight, but the pay was the same. So sometimes people are kind of disgruntled behind that. They feel like, hey, I went over and above, and John Doe or Jane Doe just really did enough to get by. And so it was really kind of a negative experience, and things like that. And that happens, even in my world. So, just try to stay away from negative comments about your boss, or your coworkers, and just really kind of highlight the positive things. And if there were negative experiences, there's a way to say it where it doesn't come across like, you know what, we have someone on our team that's like that. So, you know what, this person probably wouldn't be a good hire because, they're not going to, get along well with, a current team member. And it kind of goes without saying, be firm with your handshake, but not bone crushing. So sometimes, people say, hey, if, you don't squeeze the hand or whatever, it's not a good handshake. And I think a good firm handshake can be gentle, but not bone crushing. Is there any questions about any of that? Okay. The last aspect that I want to share is, what do you do after the interview? And oftentimes you may feel good about the interview, you may not feel good about the interview, or you just don't know. Back in the day, a lot of things were done via mail. Now we're in an electronic world. I will say it's kind of dated to really kind of send a handwritten thank you note. But I've gotten a few and I really appreciate them because you really don't get those. In most instances, you will have the email for the hiring manager or the recruiter that actually reached out to you. You may interview with a panel of people and you don't have everybody's email address. But what I would advise you to do is to send via email a brief thank you note. And if you don't have the hiring manager's business card, you can send it to the recruiter. I get them all the time. And the candidate says, hey, if you could please send this out to everybody that was on the interview team or the hiring manager, and keep it short and sweet. You don't have to attach your resume again, but you just want it to be, a simple thank you note, reminding them of a few of your qualities, and you are interested in the position. Another thing that I think is important as well is oftentimes applicants are interviewing with multiple companies. And we understand that. I ask candidates when I'm talking to them, where are you in your job search? Do you have any other offers on the table? Are you interviewing with any other companies? And so that helps me to kind of say, okay, we really like this candidate, but he or she has a job offer on the table. And it helps me to escalate them through the process or just communicate with the hiring manager. Hey, you need to interview this candidate, get in front of them before we lose them. I might say that to say this: you may leave an interview in 24 to 48 hours. You may get a phone call from another company. They offer you the job and you accept it. I think it's also a good practice to close the door with that company. Companies really, really appreciate when applicants send a note to say, hey, thank you, even after you've sent the thank you note, maybe about a week later, if you get a job opportunity that you accept, it doesn't hurt to reach back out to the hiring manager or the recruiter and say, hey, I have found a better opportunity, and I just want to let you guys know. And therefore, they can close the door. So it's not required that you do that, but you never know. That opportunity may not work out. It may not be what you thought. And at least, as a courtesy, you let that employer know versus them reaching back out to you and finding out that you've accepted another job. It's not required, but I think it's a plus. Um, Highlight your skills and how you will add value. I think that's also good to kind of put, in your note to the hiring manager, just to kind of reiterate your strengths or, what you bring to the table. Um, Also make sure, if any contact information has changed, to make sure that you share that. If everything is the same, just make sure it's all consistent. Sometimes People use different email addresses. They may have put one phone number on the application, and then they may follow up with something different. So, just be consistent with your contact information. Don't be too aggressive with constant follow up. That's a red flag. And sometimes we've actually screened candidates out because it's like, wow, if we hire this person and it's something that they, you know, want to see happen, or, you know, they're just really aggressive with, hey, I need an answer now, and they're not, patient. So it's really important, and that's kind of hard. Obviously, if you're not working, bills have to be paid, you're really interested, in the position, and you're just extra eager. Oftentimes in the interview process, they will communicate what their timeline is, so listen for that. If a company says, hey, we are in the initial stages of the interview process, you are, you know, a candidate, we've got, 2 to 3 more candidates. It'll probably be a week or two before we make a decision. Really make a mental note of that. You don't want to come across as too eager or too aggressive, because you could actually screen yourself out as a result of that. Some organizations just move slower than others. So, that's a question to ask, hey, what is your timeline? Where are you in the process and things like that? So that's a really good question that you can, ask should it not come up during the process. And the last thing that I want to tell you is please continue your job search. Don't stop applying for other roles. The interview process is so competitive. And, you may feel like, hey, you have all of the qualifications, the education, um, even on the job description, you have those preferences that the company is looking for. What you don't know is who your competition is, whether that's someone internally that they're considering for the job or someone externally that may be equally qualified or more qualified than yourself. So, oftentimes, candidates are so interested in the position, they kind of stop. Because this is a company that has a good reputation in the market. This is a company that, they know several people that work there and they feel like their chances are good. And they just kind of slow down. And so, my advice is to continue your job search because you don't know who your competition is and you really don't know what the outcome is. So, my advice is to keep pushing, continue to apply for other positions, even if it is within that company or with other companies. Now, the last thing that I want to say is if you see other positions that's open with that company that you've interviewed with, make sure you apply for positions. Well, don't be all over the place. Sometimes we see where candidates, every position that comes open, they apply. And so within maybe a 2 month period, they've applied for 40 jobs and it's all over the place. And a lot of the jobs that they apply for, they're not even qualified for. So you do want to have some consistency around the positions that you are applying for. I think that just helps to show that the area that you're most interested in and that you're most passionate about. So hopefully that's helpful. Like I say, there's a lot of good information, valid information, on the websites on the internet. So, do some additional research. And like I said, I'll share this with Alan. And then hopefully, you'll refer to it as you prepare for an interview. I will stop sharing now. And are there any other questions that you guys have?
Yeah. Hi, April. My name's Mike Arndt. I had a question on the salary question.
Uh-huh.
How to deal with that if you're asked. I've done all my research. I have a range kind of, but I don't know that I want to get cornered giving an answer. What's the best way to deal with that?
You know what? I absolutely love that question. And in my sessions with employees, I tell them to not answer a question about compensation is dated. It comes up now. I would not, as a applicant, I would not bring it up. But if a company asks me what my compensation is, and a lot of times it's a question on the application at Right Medical, we do ask the question, and we have buckets that are like $20,000. Are you looking for 30 to 50,000, 50 to 70? And we go, I think we've got maybe about 4 or 5 buckets. My advice is to know your value and to be able to state what you're looking for in terms of a range. So let's say if your salary history has been, you've been in the 65 range with a bonus, and you have some flexibility. I think it's fair to not lock yourself into one, like say, hey, I'm looking for 65. But I would say I'm looking for 55 to 70, in that range. And I am flexible. It's okay to say, well, my total compensation was in the 80 to 90 range or whatever. Employers owe it to applicants to be able to say, that's not in our budget. Here is what our budget is for this position, and does that work for you? So, a lot of times people are not comfortable with that conversation and they say, oh, I'm open, I'm negotiable, I'm flexible. Employers really don't know what that means. And, a lot of employers do not post compensation. So you have no idea, what they're paying. But I coach people to say, give them something and make it realistic for yourself. And the last thing that you want to do is undercut yourself, because that's what happens when you're unemployed and you've interviewed and interviewed. I think it comes to a point where you're like, okay, hey, I was making 60 to 65, 50 will pay the bills. Don't shoot for the stars, but you know what your value is, and communicate it. Even being in HR, I had to learn to get there, and I'm there now. So companies, and I tell candidates, this is not the right position, for you based on compensation. And I tell people, no one signs up for a pay cut, so if our budget is below what you're looking for, and I give them pointers. Here's other jobs that we have open on the website. Take a look at these. These are going to be more aligned to your compensation. Does that help?
Yeah, no, great. I appreciate that.
Yeah, but don't be afraid to answer
Thanks.
that question. Don't be afraid to answer that question.
I have a question for you, April.
Mm-hmm.
My name is Jeff Wells.
Okay.
You had mentioned on your slide, one of the last things was applying for different roles and
Mhm.
other roles in the company.
Mhm.
A good friend of mine that works at Boston Scientific,
Mhm.
he's told me that at Boston Scientific, they tend to, if they see your name pop up in a bunch of different applications for different roles, they kind of filter them out right away. They just know that person's shotgunning in there, and they look at somebody more focused. So he gave me quite the contrary. So did you mean to apply for other roles if that role passes you by, then go ahead and go after another role, or by doing it all at the same time may give a negative impression? At least that's what he's telling me. It's more of a negative impression.
Well, so, and I'm glad you called that out. So sometimes what I was trying to communicate is that A person may apply for an engineer role. They may apply for accounting. They may apply for administrative. They're just all over the place. So if you are targeting a company, target, um, a specific skill set versus being all over the place. Does that clarify?
It does, and that makes a lot of sense.
Yep. Yep. So yeah, if I didn't communicate that, we call them like serial posters, because they're just gonna they just don't have a rhyme or reason to the type of position that they are applying for. They're just all over the place. So for example, I'm not gonna frown if I see someone apply for every sales position that we have open, because they are targeting sales. Now, where I kind of take a second look is if that person has applied for sales positions in 25 different states. It's like, okay, are you, I mean, do you know where you want to live? Are you, open? I mean, that's kind of a red flag. But if it's all sales jobs on the West Coast, then that tells me, hey, this person is open to relocating on the West Coast. But if it's West Coast, East Coast, then that's, we kind of look at that different. But just have a dedicated focus. And you may have several areas that you're qualified for and you're interested in, but it shouldn't be 5 different areas that are not connected. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Good question.
Hi, April. I had a question for you too.
Okay.
My name is Danny Thoraldson, and I've had a lot of kind of contradicting people tell me how to kind of handle a resume.
Okay.
Anything from nothing longer than a 1-pager to as
Mhm.
long as everything you put in your resume applies to the job, it can be 5-6 pages long.
Mhm.
What is your personal preference with that?
So I would say keep it no more than 2 pages. And People have multiple resumes. Some people may have a resume that really kind of highlights accomplishments and metrics. One of the things that I advise, 2 pages. Um, you know, as a recruiter, I could get 50 to 100 people. And you're trying to screen through resumes. So 2 pages is enough. When it gets to 5 and 6 pages, that's a lot to just really kind of read through. Um, Limit your bullet points. You can't tell everything on a resume. Okay. So your resume, that's your ad. Um, a lot of companies like to see accomplishments or metrics. So versus, okay, if you were an administrative assistant, we know that you did filing or and things like that. So things that are kind of common sense about a job, you really kind of want to stay away from that and really connect keywords in your resume to keywords in the job description. So that's why I say read the job description, because the job description is going to tell you those soft skills, those essential functions. And we miss opportunity when we don't read the job description to go back and kind of tweak our resume. But I would say keep it to 2 pages and keep it relevant. Go through that job description, highlight keywords, or a lot of job descriptions will have essential functions. That's the meat of the job description. So if there is something about you from an experience standpoint that you connect with because you have experience and it's listed in that essential function, you need to make sure it's in your resume as well. But keep it to 2 pages. And I think a well-rounded resume gives at least about 10 years of experience. Sometimes when a resume is 5 and 6 pages, people have gone all the way back to the 80s. And we're in, 2020, don't put anything, that falls in a protected class on your resume, your age, your marital status. I still see that, your date of birth and things like that, hobbies and stuff like that. Believe it or not, people screen you in and out, with that. So sometimes people put their picture on their resume. I don't. I mean, if people want to research you, they can go to LinkedIn. but there are certain roles like marketing and sales positions, it's just kind of a part of it. People put, their picture, but just keep it 2 pages if you can. Mine is 2 pages, and I haven't had a lot of jobs, but I've got a lot to say, that's relevant. So hopefully that helps. But the anything beyond 3 pages is too much. You don't have to really offer references. Today, you can say references available upon request. But some people put a reference page. I don't read cover letters. I go straight to the resumes. But a lot of times people, they do want to add a cover letter, and it's nothing wrong with that. But I like to get to the meat of the resume. And then if I'm interested, I'll pick up the phone and call you and learn more. Does that help?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay, good. This is fun. Are there any other questions? Is anyone?
Hi. Oh, I
Go
have a
ahead.
quick one, if you don't
Okay.
mind.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
a former military spouse or spouse of a retired service member.
Mhm.
And something that I'm always looking for information on is you say you don't read the cover letter. And I've heard that from quite a few people. As a military spouse who maybe has had lots of different jobs
Mhm, mhm,
and
mhm,
big breaks in the resume,
mhm.
what would be an easy, quick way to communicate that to someone screening my resume to say, hey, yes, there's new jobs every 3 years or
Mhm,
whatever.
mhm,
So they wouldn't just automatically throw it away. They might look at it and kind of see
mhm.
why that would be without a
Yeah.
cover letter. Do you have a way that you might recommend?
What I have seen, even if someone has not been in the military and they've had some movement, um, right by the company's name or by their dates of employment in parentheses, they will put military, or they will put relocation, or they will put job elimination. So it really helps them to see what the movement, you're telling them up front, I relocated, due to the military, or sometimes people even say, personal reasons, or caregiver to my mother or my father, or whatever. So in parentheses, you can just put briefly, not a lot, just a keyword that helps them to say, oh, okay, I get it. Like I say, even if you've not been in the military, something I always tell hiring managers, because I tend to get kind of frustrated if hiring managers screen people out because of movement. I say resumes don't talk to us, people do. And good people get laid off, and we don't know their story. So your resume is your advertisement, your marketing tool. In your situation, just tell your story just by putting those keywords in parentheses for each job. You can, I mean, even if someone has company closed, company relocated, that helps them to see, oh, okay, I get it. So I think that'll be really helpful, to just put that on your resume. Are there any other questions?
I have a quick question, April.
Okay. Mhm.
I'm Michelle Bonfilio, and this is
Uh-huh.
about behavioral interview questions.
Uh-huh.
If folks are in interview and they're just getting behavioral question after behavioral question,
Mhm.
what can we assume from that? And then the second part of the question is, should folks then try to bring the HR person back to their resume, pointing out how they're a fit for the role that they're interviewing for?
Companies have different styles, and I like the question. I really like a balanced interview that's going to ask technical questions, to get to know you and your skills, and also behavioral questions. Some companies, so do you know kind of the thought behind behavioral based questions, why companies ask that? They're really trying to assess how you have behaved given a specific competency. Um, I think you do want to try to, if you notice that, give responses that's going to incorporate your experience and how you behaved as a result of that, where you're kind of multitasking your answer. You're still selling yourself, but you're also selling, this is how a situation I've ran into, I've, handled. This is what happened. These are the actions that I took. This is who I partnered with, and these are the results. So you kind of want to kind of give a dual answer where you're kind of still talking about your skills, because your behaviors are your skills, but you still want to kind of bake in your experience. And that's kind of challenging because behavior based questions are very difficult. And there's another training that I do on the behavior based method. And the answers are so structured, and it's kind of hard to do that. So,
Hi, April. I have another question.
yep.
So my name is Dennis Voldemarim, and the question that I have is, so before you do like the main interview or like the technical interview, you have to do like phone screening.
Uh-huh.
So my question to you is like, how would you approach like a phone screening interview? I mean, I feel like, sometimes, like, at least for me, I get prepared for, I can prepare for like the technical interview and like the main interview, but like I find it a little bit tricky how to prepare for like a phone screening interview. And I think like, you have to first pass the phone screening interview. So how would you, like, is there like, do you approach like in a different way, or like you approach both interviews the same way?
So with phone screens, I do those, and sometimes phone screens are kind of short and sweet, to the point. It may be led by the recruiter just to kind of, hey, why are you interested in this position? Tell me a little bit about your compensation. Tell me, why you, left, these, different, companies. A good way to really kind of be successful with a phone interview is to go online and you can say common interview questions. Most phone screens are going to capture that. Unless the job is so technical, they're going to really kind of want to screen in or screen out, and they're going to ask some technical questions. I think that's one way to do it. Also, if they email you and say, "Hey, we want to set up a phone screen." It is to your advantage to say, "Hey, I'm available such and such. Can you kind of tell me some of the questions or the format of your phone screen so I can make sure that I prepare?" Throughout my career, I have asked companies, tell me, what your interview method is. Are you more interested in technical? Is it behavioral based? So that I can prepare. And companies have shared with me. I mean, they haven't given me the questions, but they've given me some insight. So phone screens can be really tricky. I mean, they can really be tricky, and they can make or break whether you go to the next level. But if you get an opportunity, ask them, hey, what are you wanting to learn, in the phone screen so that I can prepare. Keep your answers short and sweet. Because a lot of times when I do a phone screen, I do tell candidates, hey, this is high level. I'm in the HR department. I'm not the hiring manager, so I'm not going to be technical, but I just really kind of want to get to know you to see if, this position is a good fit. A lot of times I want to tell them more about the company and the job, because it may be something, that they say, well, you know what, that's, I never would have picked that up in the job description. So, you know what, this is not a good fit. And based on, some candidates' answers, I may say, you know what, this person isn't a good fit. But think about the questions and just try to answer the questions as short and sweet as possible without rambling. So, you can at least get through the entire phone screen, and it's just not one or two questions. And then it's like, the recruiter really didn't get a chance to ask all the questions, because you kind of treated it like an interview and went too deep with your answers. But common questions, and like I say, you can find There's a much larger slide that I have, and it gives common questions like, what are your career goals? What are developmental opportunities? What are some lesson learned? Those are kind of some of the common questions. Compensation, what are your strengths? What is your working style? Things like that. So that may help you better prepare for a phone screen, because sometimes, like I say, the questions are not as deep and technical. It's kind of more like a meet and greet. Are there any other questions? You guys have definitely asked some really good questions. Are there any other questions? Okay.
I do have one, April. This is Alan.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
One of the things we stress in Eagle Group is networking. So finding, for example, picking Stryker, finding veterans at Stryker to network with and find out
Mm-hmm.
about the culture in the company.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I see that's unique on Stryker's website is they actually have I put the link in the chat there, is they have a place where they encourage referrals. In this case, it's from employees. I'm just wondering if you can speak more to that as to how it works on your side, from in general, and then also from the recruiting side. How does that work for you
So
guys?
so I'm learning Stryker. We just got acquired. I could speak to just a referral program holistically at Wright Medical. We That's how we really get most of our hires, through referrals. We have a dedicated referral program. So at the time of application, if I refer you, then there's a question on the application that says, how did you learn about this position? It might be a recruiting event, it might be LinkedIn, it might be Indeed, or it could be employee referral. And if you were to select employee referral, it's going to say, well, who? And then you will put my name in. And so that's captured on the application. And thank you, Zach. Have a good after a good evening. And so we actually, okay, so because someone is referred, they still need to be qualified for the position. So we don't give a referral like preferential treatment if they're not qualified, but if they are qualified, we do try to engage them or push them over to the hiring manager. And if that referral bubbles up and they are hired, 90 days later, the internal employee gets a payout. If it is a salary position, it's $1,000. If it is an hourly position, it's $500. In certain roles, we get tons of referrals. And I kind of filter by referrals first, to kind of see, okay, who referred this person? And I want to look at internals. Then I want to look at referrals. And then I also look at internals. I also ask hiring managers, some hiring managers, while they appreciate a referral, they want to look at all candidates because they don't want to feel like they're missing out on good talent that was not referred. So I think a company at Wright Medical, we are big on willingness to recommend. Our past president, one of our survey questions is, do you like working here? To the point where you would recommend a family member or a previous coworker. And that speaks a lot to the culture of the company. And at Wright Medical, I hated to, but I had to turn a lot of referrals down because, they were not qualified for the job. So, but yeah, a lot of companies, especially if it's someone that's, well, now I'm not going to say well known, but, good talent typically refers good talent, is how most employers look at it. So they do want to encourage people to say, hey, I've got a brother, I've got a cousin, I've got a colleague, a past coworker that, or I met someone in the grocery store that I don't know and overheard a conversation. And, they shared their resume and, hey, I told them about the company and to go check us out. So that's the best advertisement that a company can really have, coming from their own employees. And I've referred tons of people to Wright Medical that have gotten hired. So
Thank you very much, April.
You're very welcome. If there are not any other questions, I am going to jump off. And I will send this over to you. And Alan, did you see the military recruiting slide deck? You found that? Okay,
Oh,
good.
well, I put the link to the military link on the Striker
Okay.
careers. So
Okay, good
put that
deal.
in
Good
chat.
deal. Okay, good deal. Well, good luck. Alan, I'm going to try to jump on again and talk about behavioral based. Thank you, Renee, about behavioral based interviewing, at some point. I think that'll be helpful as well.
Great. Well, I'm going to pause the recording
Okay.
or stop it, actually. I'm going to
Okay.
stop it.